Welcome, everyone. This is Pop the Disinformation Bubble from Building Bridges for America. Quick intro to myself. My name is Kaz Marginal. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from South Bend, Indiana, and I have been working in volunteer-wise as a super volunteer for campaigns going back to 2019. Prior to 2019, I was not very political, but when Pete Buttigieg ran for president, he lit a fire under my butt, and I started volunteering on his campaign. And after his campaign wrapped up, we then started building bridges for America using the training from that we developed through his campaign. So Pop the Disinformation Bubble is a little bit different from the rest of our courses. Our courses are usually focused on how to volunteer in the political sphere, but this one is near and dear to my heart. So I developed this course for research background, and I developed this course because I had a loved one who I lost to a disinformation rabbit hole, and they got radicalized and fell into a cult. And so I had to, as I worked, over the years to bring them back, win back their trust. And but while I was going through that, trying to understand, why did someone who's so smart and so kind, why did they believe that stuff? Why did they get all wrapped up? So I developed this course for that reason, but I found that a lot of other people were in the same boat, having trouble navigating our current landscape, and then also having loved ones around them that are falling victim to the lies. So that's where this course comes from, and that's why I'm so passionate about this course. We've been teaching this course since 2019 or 2020. So going back in the Wayback Machine, we're going to start here with back when President Biden had his inauguration. And in his inaugural speech, he said, "Let us listen to one another, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics need not be a raging fire destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured." So that was a president saying that in his inaugural speech, pointing out not only in the hard times that we see growing with those growing divisions, but also rejecting that culture in which facts themselves are manipulated, even manufactured. So how do we get to this point, and what do we do about it? That is what we're talking about today. So first, we are going to learn about disinformation. And so you're going to learn about it, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to inform others with empathy. So you're going to see that pattern throughout today's course. So today's goals, we're going to start off by identifying disinformation and knowing how did it become so prevalent, learning how to navigate this the media. So that's having media literacy. And then we're going to turn and we're going to talk about how the heck can people believe this stuff, and what can we do, some practical ways to help people seek the truth. Start with the basics. What is disinformation? So disinformation is, and misinformation, you will kind of hear those words used interchangeably, but they do mean very different things. So misinformation is information that is false, but the person that is sharing that information, they actually believe it's true. So that's misinformation. Disinformation, though, is false information, but the person that's sharing it, they know it's false. They're trying to trick you. That's disinformation. The reason why misinformation, disinformation often get used interchangeably is because it's hard to tell intent. It's hard to tell if somebody truly believes that something is true or not, or if they're truly a bad actor who is knowingly sharing false information. So again, you may hear those words being used interchangeably because the difference there is intent. There's a third piece that's called malinformation. That's also, you'll hear that these days called like doxing. So malinformation is true information that is being put out there to harm people. So there's an intent to do harm with true information. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about misinformation, and then, particularly about the really bad stuff, the bad actors spreading the disinformation. So it helps to identify and be able to spot misinformation, disinformation, if you can categorize it, if you can see the categories that are out there, then it helps you to be able to recognize it. So these are different categories of disinformation and misinformation. On the left hand of the screen, that is more of the misinformation side. That kind of stuff, there's not as much of an intent to, or there's no intent to do harm. Whereas stuff on the left, that's the really bad stuff. That is the disinformation put out there by bad actors to intentionally mislead you. I want to mention that the content of these slides comes from a UNESCO. It's called Journalism, Fake News, and Disinformation. This is UNESCO. UNESCO starts with the UN. So it starts with UN because it's from the United Nations. And this is a training that they put out from UNESCO to go around the world for people to learn media literacy. And I share that to say that what we're seeing with disinformation isn't just something happening here in America, it's happening globally. Also, this content is from 2014. So this is not something that has happened recently. This is not something that's happened because of who currently sits in the White House. This is something that's been happening for a while. So just wanted to share that as context to what's going on. But again, back to categorizing the different forms of misinformation and disinformation. If you start over there on the left side, the far left side, you see satire or parody. So things like, Saturday Live and places where that they're doing a parody of the news. It's false information, right? But there is no intent to do harm. They're trying to be funny. Another one over there on the left is false connection. So that's when the headlines and the rest of the article don't match up. This could also be called clickbait. So that is a form of misinformation. You can argue about the intent to do harm there, but that is a form of misinformation. Then if we go over to the left-hand side, that's where you get to the really bad stuff. That's where you get to stuff like they will manipulate content. They'll take true content and they will change it to make it into something that it's not. Or what we're seeing even more nowadays, because AI is just making it so easy to generate completely fabricated content. So completely 100% false, made only to deceive. So again, it kind of will help to identify misinformation, disinformation, if you can categorize it. We'll have a little activity coming up in a bit where I'm going to show you some examples, and you're going to categorize, see if you can categorize where that fits on this chart. So how did we get here? How did we get to this point that there is such a rise in disinformation and misinformation? So back using that UNESCO again is there are these three pillars to a functioning democracy. Is we got informed citizens, you and me going to vote, informed citizens that are that vote. They put their they vote and they vote people into office, and then the news covers those people and what they're doing in office, and then they create that informed citizen. So it goes round and round. There's these three pillars. So what happens when one of those pillars is no longer there. So what happens when that media pillar is no longer that has a radical change? That's when we see this disruption in our governance. So again, how did we get here? I'm old enough to remember when TVs had knobs on them. And TVs had, you had just a handful of channels, just a few channels that you can turn the knob to. So that was called the pre-digital era. And back then, there was a journalism had what was called the gatekeeper model. So this was a practice of fact checking before publishing. And also because there was just a few channels, everybody was experiencing the same news, right? We might be interpreting the news differently, but at least we were all getting the same news from the same sources. So in that pre-digital era, there was this sense of trust, sense of community, because again, you had these shared experiences of the news. Now you fast forward to now, and with media being fractured in so many different places, people getting their news from so many different places, we can actually create our own media bubbles, even within one household, right? People can be getting their news from completely different sources. Also, there is no longer that journalistic practice to fact check in many of our news sources. So that means that we have to act as our own gatekeepers. We need to determine what is true or not for ourselves. And as I will show in the second half of this presentation, we're not good at that. We're not good at being able to tell what is true or not. So what happens when we're all in our own world, our own media bubbles, is that it creates a sense of loneliness, right? We don't have that shared experience of the news. We're all experiencing it. Like I said, even within one household, you can have people getting completely different views of the world. So that makes you feel lonely, can make you feel afraid. And yeah, you lose that sense of community. So you actually then, when you lose that sense of community, you actually seek community. So you find yourself seeking community then online. And then you add to this soup, you add to it the bad actors. There are bad actors out there that are intentionally putting misleading content out there. They want to lower the trust that people have in institutions, in governments. They want to push us further from the truth. There are some people that just, like they said in Batman, just want to watch the world burn. So you also get bad actors that are just putting stuff out there to create chaos. So a little bit more on the bad actors. So this is nothing new. We have been seeing this for decades of putting information out there to lower trust in our government. It actually started with Russia, but Russian bots years ago. We're talking decades ago now. That they started putting out what was called 50-50 messaging. So they didn't just put information out that was against the popular ideas at the time. They put out information that was 50-50, both pro and against, for things that had a consensus, things that we all agreed on, things that had a consensus. They then would put 50-50 messaging out. So half the stuff saying that this consensus isn't true, but half of it saying it is. And if something has a consensus, you don't have to put the positive stuff out there. So what that ended up doing is it ended up discrediting authoritative voices. The first thing they actually did we're talking decades ago, they actually first started with the vaccines, right? So there's a consensus that vaccines are social good, and they started putting stuff out saying, 50% pro-vaccine, 50% anti-vaccine, took something that was a consensus and made it controversial. They discredited the authoritative voices of scientists, made us distrust institutions, distrust our government, distrust each other, right? And it created a weaker America. So Russia's been on this beat for a long time. Others have joined in, but again, this is nothing new. Another thing that we've seen for decades now is the media attempting to cover both sidesism, they call it. So they want to create what is actually a false balance. So this is further taking something that has a consensus and trying to create a false balance out of it. So even if most people, most scientists agree, like in terms of climate change, when most scientists agree that that climate change is real, the media will give equal presence to that one person who says that it's not, right? So that creates a false balance. And again, they do it for various reasons. One, they do it just because it creates entertainment on TV to have debates. It also makes it so media they don't feel like they have a left-leaning bias if they are giving disproportionate attention to the other side. So again, same effect: distrust of institutions, normalizing these kind of extremes, lowering the credibility for science and also our justice system. So I recommend, if any of this interests you, I recommend a book by Pete Buttigieg. He wrote a book called Trust. I don't know what you did during the pandemic, but he wrote a book called Trust, and it's a refreshingly short, very readable book, but it gives you the full background on how we got here, how did disinformation get so prevalent. So I highly recommend his book Trust. All right, we're going to practice our media literacy. So I'm going to give you examples of something that is in the news, and I want you to then determine, is it legit or not? So the ways that we determine if something is legit or not, first is to curate your sources. So when you are out there, when you are encountering news, the two ways that you can encounter news is you're either out seeking the news, you're going directly to sources, or you are scrolling through social media, or somebody sends something to you, texts you a news story, you encounter the news. So in both cases, if you're out seeking the news, you want to be working on curating your sources. So where are you getting that news? Is that news something that is trustworthy? Is that something that's fact-based? Or is it more of an opinion and you need to add that into the calculus? If you are encountering the news, you want to be looking for an original source on that, and then using that, determining what is that source, something that is trusted, and that is that can be, is it biased? Check where it's posted. Hint, if it's on social media, it's a good chance it's fake. And then there's something called the smell test. So this is where your gut comes in. This is where your instinct comes in and tells you if something seems off. So again, we are going to have a little practice on interpreting this. First, we're going to talk about curating those sources. So if you are going out and seeking the news, you can, if you want to find news that is very trustworthy, fact-based, something that is unbiased, you can use this is called ad fonts media. What they do is that they do a very objective analysis of all the media sources. And this image here, this is just a small number of the media sources that they analyze. But they do an objective analysis of all the media sources and determine, is that media source going on the chart top to bottom? Top is, are they fact-based? Middle is, are they opinion? Do they largely share opinions? And it's hard to tell opinions from facts anymore, right? Journalism used to make it very obvious when they were sharing an opinion rather than facts in the news. Nowadays, not so much so, right? It's really hard to tell because they no longer will necessarily say when something is an opinion. And then the stuff down at the bottom, that is just false news. That's just fake. They're just putting out fake information. And then the other direction of this chart is the bias left or right. So anything more on the left is more left leaning. right, more, conservative leaning, but in the middle is more unbiased. So again, they do the work for you of determining, just in a very objective sense, where the different outlets fall. So you can use this in two ways. You can use this, one is to find news sources that are up at the top there that are fact-based and are unbiased. But then you can also use this, if there are sources you already like to go to, you can check your own bias. You can check your own instincts for being able to determine stuff between opinions and facts by looking at this chart. So if you have a source that you think, I know I have many friends that they'll think that, the Wall Street Journal is just so hyper partisan for conservatives, and they don't share any facts. Well, if you look at this chart, you'll see that the Wall Street Journal, it's slightly over to the conservative side, and they mostly report facts. So that you can check in your own bias, right? It's like if you can think that the Wall Street Journal is hyper partisan to the right, your own bias probably falls over to the left, right? So that just helps be able to you be able to understand where your bias is. And that's fine. We all have a bias, but if you know where it's at, it can help you more objectively be able to see where the different sources land. And then if you just focus on the stuff at the top and in the middle, you can use this to check news stories. So you can see one of the ones at the top here is BBC, CBC, Go Canada, as NPR, a lot of these, The Hill, and they don't have the images for it because they're just such standards, as AP and Reuters are just the gold standard. They're always the ones at the top and in the middle. So if you see a piece of news and you want to know if it's true or not, go check out AP, go check out Reuters, go check out BBC. If they are also covering it, then you can believe that's true because they actually do continue to do fact checking. So you can believe that information. So that's the other way you can use it, is to know what the good sources are. So we're going to do that activity where I'm going to show you something from the media, and you're going to let me know, is it true or not? Do you think? And then if it's not true, what category does it fall under? All right, so this one is something my dad actually texted this to me not long ago. He sent this to me and he said, "Can you believe this? Oh my gosh." So this is a video. I wish I could show you the video, but I just got the image for you here. This is a video of the Danish Prime Minister and Parliament in session, and they're hysterically laughing. And it says here that they are laughing at the idea that Trump wants to buy Greenland, right? So is that true? Did the Danish Prime Minister and were they hysterically laughing at Trump wanting to buy Greenland? Is that legit or not? Yes or no? Anybody?
Feel free to put it in the chat.
Oh, my dad thought it was real.
We got a no.
Yeah.
A firm no.
Firm no. All right, let's do the analysis. Let's first of all, let's check that original source. There is none. There are no sources here. There is no link to a source. There's no link to an AP News article. There is no original source. Check where it's posted. This was on Facebook. Again, if it's something that someone's sharing you and it's on one of the major social media sites, good chance that it's fake. right? It's just absolutely just littered with bad actors putting out bad stuff, or misinformation. People like my dad believing it and regurgitating this stuff around. And then there's something called the smell test, right? It's just like, if this truly did happen, I don't think we would just be encountering it on a Facebook post. Especially in this case, my dad shared this to me months after it happened. Like, this wouldn't be the source of where we would see this. So that's that smell test. So is this true? No, it's not. Now, the video is real. They took a real video. So Danish Parliament, they were sharing a particularly funny piece of legislation. It was very, very cute and heartwarming, involved elephants. It was very nice. So they took a real piece of video, but then they changed the context of it. They just simply said, rather than laughing about this, these people are laughing at Trump. So they took something true, and they put different context to it. So that is misleading content. So it is a form of disinformation, or actually, in this case, probably it started as a joke, and people like my dad did not see it as funny. So maybe it was misinformation. Maybe the person putting it out there originally did not intend for harm, because they thought people would see that it was a joke and then move on. So one of the very key things also about being able to detect if something is true or not, ask yourself, is this a joke? Are they trying to be funny? Because yeah, like I said, satire is a form of disinformation. All right, next one. This is a post, it actually just came out the other day. Iranian officials have officially confirmed that a U.S. air operation in Tehran failed. 173 American soldiers from Delta source were captured, and it says unclassified. Is this true? Is this real? Yes or no?
Sheila comes in with a no.
Another no.
Ashley, no.
Okay.
Sharon, no.
All right, we got some good instincts in the room here. Good instincts. So again, let's do that analysis. Let's check the original source. There is none. There is no source. There is no link to anything. Check where it's posted. This again was on Facebook. So again, on social media. And then there's the smell test. Number one, true breaking news, first of all, doesn't start with like little emojis. That's just not the way, that most news is put out there. Again, there's no original source linked. And then also it looks like a frame from a movie. Like, if you've ever seen real footage, real war footage, it's not going to be perfectly framed and look like something in a movie. So no, this is, as you all have noted, false. And this is the really bad stuff. This is 100% false, right? Everything about this is fake. There's no shred of truth to any of this. So nowadays, if somebody wants to create a fake image like this, they can just type a short sentence into a prompt online, something like ChatGPT, all these other ones where you can just simply type a prompt in and it will generate photos and stuff like this. It is very easy to do. Creating this fabricated content used to be harder. Now it's really easy to do. So you really have to use that smell test part of you to be just decoding and determining if this stuff is true or not. All right, well, good job. You guys have good instincts going on. So a little bit for a review of how to have good media literacy. This comes from the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. So from our librarians. Librarians continue to be a great resource for the truth and how to seek the truth. So they reiterate that first thing you want to do is consider the source. Is there a source linked to it? Is that source something that is reliable? Go beyond the headline. Know that there's clickbait out there. So don't just read the headline, read the whole article when you are determining if something is true or not. Check the author. That goes along with considering the source. Are there supporting sources? Again, is it linked to something that is legitimate? Check the date. So bad actors like to play the oldies over and over again. If something fooled people once, they're going to just keep recycling it. Like my dad found that video from the Danish Parliament months after it originally came out, right? So somebody just kept that circulating because they knew it was tricking people. Always ask yourselves, is this a joke? Is this satire? And then be checking your own biases. Again, using AdFont's media chart is a good way to check your own biases. All right. Now we're going to move into from media literacy to kind of understanding how the heck this stuff happens. First, before we talk about the how, there is when you are on social media, when you're on anywhere online, just know that when you're on social media, it's not real. You are in an algorithm, right? It's not organic. It is created. It is generated through an algorithm. The engagement that you see is not something, again, that is organic. The engagement is something that is built through an algorithm. And there was a whistleblower at Facebook when they were developing their algorithm that said that, yes, they do weight negative emotions in their algorithm, meaning that if something creates negative emotions, they're going to share it more, again, inorganically, going to share it more than stuff that people that build up positive emotions. So just know, again, it's not real. The engagement is not entirely organic. It's being the bad stuff is being artificially put out there across all the social media platforms. There's none that are organic. They're all in an algorithm. So just keep that in mind whenever you are on social media. So what should you do if you are in your algorithm and you encounter a piece of disinformation? So if you are on social media and you see a piece of disinformation, what should you do? The best thing to do is nothing. The best thing to do is walk away. Just stop and walk away, because again, you're not in the real world, you're in an algorithm. And anytime that you pay any kind of attention to a post, the algorithm is saying that you want to see more of that. You want others to see that. So it's not just clicking on things, it's actually seeing it. Like they can tell how long you are looking at a piece of information or a post. If you're viewing a video, right, the number of views of that video. So even if you're not interacting it, just encountering it, just being in the space with it, is boosting that piece of that post in its algorithm. But if you then share it, like even if you share it and you're saying this is disinformation, this is wrong, the algorithm doesn't see that. The algorithm says this needs to get shared. We want more people to see this. So anytime you click or view something, you are voting for that piece of information. You are saying that is important and you want other people to see it. So again, if you see a piece of disinformation online, best thing to do is to stop, ignore it, and walk away. You don't click on anything. The only thing is there are some platforms, less and less so, that allow you to report stuff as disinformation. So the only click you should ever make on anything is to report it. But if you have to, if you feel like you really need to let people know that something is disinformation, what you can do is you can take a screenshot of it and then you can share that and let people know that that is disinformation. That takes it out of its algorithm, and then you're not artificially or unintentionally sharing that. And then also, if you see a friend that is sharing this, like my dad sent me that video, I put my arm gently around him and I shared with him, I actually sent the link to Reuters fact check about that, so he can read that and really understand that it was fake. So put your arm around people and let them know when they are sharing that bad information. And then what you can do on the positive side is put the good stuff out there, right? Put truth out there. If you see a lie, spread the good stuff, because we know that that algorithm is going to favor the negative. So we want to swim upstream and push that aside, past that. So that means for every bad piece of information you see, put the good stuff out there 5 times. So I know it's 2026, we're heading into elections. You're going to see a lot of disinformation and maybe about some of the candidates you like. Don't react to the bad stuff that they're saying about the candidate. Instead, pick 5 things, 5 news articles about the candidate you like, and put that out there, right? So that is actually the best stuff that you can do. All right, so how the heck can people believe this stuff? So first, we're going to walk through understanding our brains, how our brains work, and learning how we can be thinking critically, and then gain empathy for those people around us who are falling victim to the disinformation, and helping them be able to seek the truth for themselves. So first of all, the way that our brains process information. So a piece of information just comes along and bonks you on the head, right? So you're scrolling through social media, and a news article comes and hits your eyeballs, hits your brain, and your brain immediately asks itself 5 questions. Immediately, in a split second, it asks itself to determine if something is true. It first asks, do other people believe this? And you can actually feel yourself asking yourself that question usually when you encounter a new piece of information. Do others believe it? Even if you're in the real world, if you hear something and you wonder, did I hear that? Was that true? You look around to others, right? Are other people reacting? Did other people hear that? The same thing online. If you encounter a piece of information, you want to know, do others believe it? You're going to look at how many views did it get? How many likes did it get, right? You're going to put that into your calculus of whether or not you believe something is true or not. So that's the first question that you immediately ask yourself, is, do others believe it? If you say no, if you feel like others don't believe it, that piece of information, it's going to bounce right off your head. It's, sometimes it's like it didn't even happen. Again, talking about, like, if you're out in the real world and you hear a noise, you look around, nobody else heard it, boom, it's like you didn't even hear it, right? It's out of your head. So but let's say you do determine that other people believe it, then you're going to go to the next question. Again, your brain does this in a split second. Next question, can I easily find evidence that this is true? Not, can I do a bunch of research and find out that it's true? Can I, in this split second, find evidence that that is true? The next question you ask yourself, is this compatible with stuff that I already believe, right? Does this kind of make sense in the world as I know it? Next, it's ask yourself, is this telling a good story? Does this, again, make kind of sense in the world that I'm in? And then third, is it coming from a familiar source? So in a split second, your brain is asking itself those 5 questions to determine if something is true. If any of them aren't true, again, that piece of information bounces right off your head. You don't even notice it. So what does that mean for the way that our brains process information? It means that if something is familiar, if we've seen it before, we're more likely then to determine that it is true. So this comes from a study where people were told 3 times that a statement was false, and they were more likely to believe that it was true than the people that were told it only once. So even though they were told it was false, just because they heard it 3 times, their brains, just the way our brains work, it was familiar. So then they were more likely to believe that it was true. So what that means is that there is this illusory truth effect, which means that our brains will process familiar information as true. Bad actors know this. Bad actors know that this is how your brain works. Let's go back to the 2020 election, where the the MAGA side, the Republican side, was putting out, just repeatedly putting out these news stories about ballots being shredded. Right? They just kept putting this out there, and they started it with this picture of a trailer, truck trailer with like shredded piece of papers in it. And they were saying, "Oh, this is evidence of shredded ballots." Turns out that's completely false, right? That picture had nothing to do with that whatsoever. They just took an old picture and put different context of it. But maybe you saw that, maybe the first time you saw that, you're like, oh, that's not true. That can't be true. But then they just kept bringing it up. So then, boom, next story. It's just a random picture, random video of a guy taking out the trash. Oh, well, no, that's shredding. That's shredding more documents, right? And again, maybe you saw that and you're like, nah, that's not true. But the third time, fourth time, fifth time, sixth time that you're seeing this over and over and over again, they know, those bad actors know that eventually, as ridiculous as this stuff could be, your brain is going to start to process this information as true. And we saw that. We see a lot of people that continue to believe there were votes shredded and that the election was quote unquote stolen. People truly believe that because again, they were tricked. The Republicans knew how to manipulate their brain in order to start believing this stuff, even outlandish as it was. But you can take the same way of understanding how our brains work and how it asks those questions. You can take that same information and you can then use it to help yourself and help others learn how to think critically. So when that piece of information comes along and you ask yourself, is it true? And you ask that first question, do others believe it? Stop. Know that your brain's going to ask that question. Stop yourself and say, you know what? I'll be the judge. I don't need, for groupthink. I'm going to be the judge for myself. Can I easily find evidence that it's true? No, again, stop. I'm going to look it up. Right? So give yourself that agency to do that. Is it compatible with something that I believe? If you feel yourself pulled to asking that, to determine if something is true, stop and just say, I'm open to new ideas, right? I don't know everything in the world. Be a little humble and and be open. Does it tell a good story? So the basis of human communication is storytelling. And so if it tells a good story, we're going to be more likely to be tricked into believing that something is true. Well, no, let's just stick to the facts. Again, if somebody did that when they were looking at that truck trailer of shredded with shredded paper inside, they just wanted the facts. They'd see that was just a random old photo from a long time ago. It had nothing to do with anything. The story, right? They told a good story around it, but if they just stuck to the facts, they would know that was fake. And then does it come from a familiar source? A lot of us like to have our same sources of information. I mean, back in the day, we all had our favorite news anchor, right? And even today, like my mom loves her Rachel, right? And that's great, but also, be open to fresh voices, right? To get yourself out of that bubble. So again, use that same way that the bad actors use our brain to trick us, to instead challenge yourself and challenge others to stop and think critically. And also, just like they put the bad information on repeat, so they heard it over and over, they heard the lies over and over, and they started to believe it's true. Well, you can do the same thing with the truth. Put the truth out there on repeat. And then also, when you're introducing something new to, friends, family, whoever, put it in storytelling, like create that story. That is a way that people are going to believe that something is true. So to put the truth, wrap it in a story, tie it back to something that is already familiar to them, right? So that way their brain is more quickly going to process true. And then that familiar source, you're a familiar source to people that you already know. So by just sharing news, you sharing the news, you becoming that trusted source just because they already are familiar with you, they're more likely to believe that something is true. Next, I want to talk about political gaslighting. So gaslighting is when people will, so a bad actor, a manipulator, we've got a picture of one on the screen, bad actor, they try to make you feel like you can't trust your own eyes and ears, make you feel like you are going crazy. The reason why they do that is because the path to truth, to seeking the truth, is to trust yourself to think critically. So, what the bad actors do is they make you distrust yourself. They make you think that you cannot determine what is true or not. That is gaslighting. In political gaslighting, what you see is that something happens, we see it with their eyes and ears, and they give outlandish counter narratives to explain what's happening. Again, discrediting your own eyes and ears, so you're not sure. It's like, did I really see that? Did I really hear that? Right? That's a form of manipulation to make it so you don't trust your own senses. There's denial of plain fact. I mean, many times that we have seen the current occupant of the White House just denying plain facts. And again, that makes you question, did I really remember that correctly? You know, and they also, a big thing that supporters of bad actors do is they say, oh, he didn't really mean that. Oh, that was just a joke. Oh, he was being funny. That's another way then you then lose trust in yourself. It's like, I'm not in on the joke, right? It's like, darn, I can't even tell when people are being funny or not. It makes you further, again, lose trust in your ability to think critically. And then a big one that they do is they discredit the authorities. So they say, you know, the media is all lies, right? I remember one of the first one of the first political rallies that the current occupant of White House did back when he ran the first time was he told the audience to turn around, look at the journalists and said, they're the real enemy. Right. So immediately, right off the bat, discrediting authorities. What does that make it do? You can no longer have anyone to turn to in order to get information and be able to critically think for yourself. Right. Again, referencing back to Pete Buttigieg's book, Trust, is a great line in there. He says, when someone whispers trust no one, they're inevitably also saying trust me. So again, when they're discrediting those authorities, when they're saying you can't believe yourself, you can't believe others, they're saying trust me. So again, it's a form of manipulation. So what can you do if you see somebody have somebody in your life that has been gaslit, that they no longer feel like they can trust their own ability to critically think or to determine the truth? Well, first, one is just introducing gaslighting as a concept. People don't know when they're being manipulated. They think they're going crazy, right? So if you just introduce it as an abstract idea that, you know, that this gaslighting is something that happens, really explain that it is about somebody making you distrust yourself, distrust your eyes and ears. Just introduce it as a concept that can help people start to see the light a little bit. Also, no matter what, you know, how far down, you know, how much Kool-Aid you're drinking, something in their gut is still saying that maybe this isn't right. So again, if people are being told that they can't trust their gut, they can't trust that sense, tell them that they can. Like, say that, you know, I know that you know that your gut is right. I know that you have good instincts in there. I know you can tell. We walked through how people can critically think in the prior slides. So walk them through exactly what it is to critically think, to stop and actually critically think for themselves. And actually, the best thing to do if someone's being gaslit is to remove them from the source. If they're constantly just being fed and being told that they can't trust their own eyes and ears, just removing them from the source helps people to start to see the light. And the last thing we're going to talk about is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this is when people who are lying, they are often the loudest. People who don't know what they're talking about, they actually have the most confidence in what they're talking about. Because when you lack that confidence, when you can't critically think, when authoritative voices have been discredited, there's no wisdom to be gained. You know everything there is to know, right? when you can't think for yourself and all you know is what somebody else is shoving down your throat, there is no wisdom gained, right? You know everything. So therefore you are very boastful, you're very loud, because what the Dunning-Kruger effect shows is that the confidence, people's confidence in their wisdom is highest when they know the least. And it's only once you start to realize that you don't know everything, right? You don't know, like people that are super confident, they don't know what they don't know. But once you start to have a little bit of humility and start to realize that you don't know everything, then your confidence actually goes down. So again, the loudest people are going to be, most confident people. They are going to have the least amount of information. And what can you do about that? What can you do if there's somebody in your life that is so convinced that they are right? There's something called the illusion of explanatory depth. So you've probably felt this in your life where you thought you knew all about a subject and then you were asked to teach others about it. And then you realize, I don't know as much as I thought that I did. That's the illusion of explanatory depth, that we think we understand really complex systems better than we do. So actually the best thing to do when you encounter somebody who's really confident and believes that they know everything is to say, explain that to me. Oh, that's interesting, but can you explain that to me? A lot of times they just regurgitate what they already hear, all the Kool-Aid that they've been drinking. So from whatever, extreme media sources they're getting their stuff from, they're just regurgitating stuff word for word. So if you can say, I think I've heard that before, but can you put that in your own words? Can you explain that to me? That's going to make them, again, to realize that they don't know everything. They don't know. They're going to start to realize that there's stuff out there that they don't know. It's going to make them more humble, maybe more curious. And actually what usually happens is people get mad. People get mad that no one's ever challenged them and asked them to explain something before. So they start to realize they don't know. Right? They're just parroting what other people say. So usually people get mad at first, but that's good because you're kicking them off of what is an actual scientific term, the peak of Mount Stupid. You're helping kick them off of that peak of Mount Stupid, so they for themselves can start to seek new information and again maybe start to critically think for themselves.